Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Abbie Richie. I'm the CEO and founder of Senior Savvy, which helps older adults with their technology. And every Tuesday, you can find me right here talking with people who are engaged in age tech and how that's impacting those in senior living. Before we bring our guests on, let me go ahead and run our intro. Now, if you were with me a couple of weeks ago, we had on some folks on an expert panel talking about hearing aid development and technology. And this is something that I am actively interested in because many of my clients wear hearing aids. And hearing loss impacts isolation so much, not only for the person who has the hearing loss, but also the people that are living with them and around them and interacting with them. I've dealt with this firsthand, both in my personal life with my folks, as well as with my students and my clients with Senior Savvy. And so this topic of hearing aid development and technology is always on my mind because I want the best for the people that I serve. And a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about hearing aid technology advancements, the word Auracast came up and it got me really interested. So today we're talking about Auracast, what it is, how it's going to impact your residents, your students, your clients, and where we're at with that development today. So I'd like to go ahead and invite Chuck Sabin. He is from Bluetooth. Welcome to welcome to Tech Tuesday.
Thank you very much. I'm the Senior Director for Market Development for the Bluetooth Special Interest Group. Which means I generally focus on new technologies and new capabilities for Bluetooth technology. And Auracast is one of those new technologies that we're going to be talking about today.
I can't wait. And we also have Juliette. Juliette, please join us. Juliette Sturkins, please introduce yourself and welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Abbie. I am Dr. Juliette Sturkins. I'm an audiologist. Owned a private practice in Oshkosh, Wisconsin for over 25 years. And currently I'm the National Hearing Loop Advocate with the Hearing Loss Association of America. So I spend a lot of time educating consumers and their partners, facilities that want to be more hearing accessible, and lecture all kinds of, basically, if you want more information about how to hear better with your hearing aids, I'm there to help.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we have one more guest who will be joining us in just a minute. And so I'll bring him on as soon as he's ready. But I want to ask you guys, for anyone who doesn't know or hasn't heard of, what is Auracast? Chuck?
So yeah, I'll take that. So Auracast is a new capability from Bluetooth wireless technology, whereby essentially a Bluetooth device can broadcast an audio source to an unlimited number of in-range devices. And this can be used for home. It can also be used for public spaces like TVs, PA systems, conference audio, education audio, whatever it might be, or any other audio source. So effectively, if you want to think about it, in the future, users will be able to scan and listen to audio access points in public spaces in the same way that you may scan for a Wi-Fi access point today to get internet access. Now you're going to get audio access essentially to what's happening inside that public space. And we ultimately believe this new capability will deliver new audio experiences for users. It'll help your world sound better. And it can also change the way that you interact with audio in the world around you. So that's effectively what Auracast is in terms of this new capability from Bluetooth technology that's coming out into the market.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to go ahead and bring Brian Taylor on. He is also a panelist today. Welcome to Tech Tuesday, Brian. I'm glad that you're here with us.
Sorry I'm late to the party. Good to be with you.
You know what? We understand tech issues always come up on Tech Tuesday, so we have a lot of grace for that. No problem at all. And Brian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers as well?
Sure. My name is Brian Taylor. I am the Senior Director of Audiology for a hearing aid manufacturer, WS Audiology. We have two brands. I represent the Signia brand.
Right. Wonderful. And we were just starting to talk about Auracast. And Juliette, what problem does Auracast solve?
Well, what you really need to do first is address why, and why I, as an audiologist, and Brian, as representing a manufacturer, are on this panel. And that's really because hearing aids do not restore hearing to normal. They're hearing aids. They're working with an impaired ear. Hearing aid microphones have limited capabilities, 4, 5, 6 feet at the most. And that means that people who wear hearing aids still, even with the top of the line technology, experience difficulties hearing in places beyond those 4, 5, 6 feet. And so Auracast is a future technology that may, but we have no data yet, we have no studies yet, that may help people with hearing aids once the hearing aids include that technology. There's already other technology inside hearing aids that can do that, and we'll probably talk about that in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. Brian, I wanted to ask you, how far away are we from seeing this come to fruition?
Best guess is within the next, sometime in 2024. So within the next year, you'll probably start to see it inside the hearing aid.
Excellent. Excellent. And when we're thinking about public hearing, how does that impact the listener right now who is having a hard time in a movie theater, at a conference, or at a mall, for instance? How important is it to improve this type of public hearing assistance?
So,
I'm not sure who's that directed to.
Oh, Chuck.
I'll take that. Just start, and we can. I mean, it's a panel discussion, so anyone can chime in. But in general, I think it's extremely important, right? If there's anything that I have learned, and Juliette would probably back this up as well, if there's anything that I have heard from talking to people with hearing loss, it's that they say in unanimous voice that I just want to hear like everyone else, right? And this not only includes improving audio for conversations, like just the microphone on the hearing aid itself, but this is for improving audio for everyday living, including things like entertainment, worship, travel. Almost every audio interaction that you may have in a public space has opportunity to be enhanced for someone who has hearing loss. And so this is why technologies like Auracast, and Juliette will talk about loop technology as well, which are direct to hearing or direct to device hearing technologies, allow the user to be able to interact with the audio and to have a better approximation of the audio directly to the device and directly to their hearing needs for that individual. So when you talk about public hearing assistance in public spaces, people just want to interact with the audio. They want to hear better. And it's technologies like Auracast and the current technology of Loop that provide those types of capabilities for people with hearing loss.
Thank you for that explanation. Juliette, will you please tell us about Loop and what limitations Loop has?
Yeah. So what I already mentioned is that hearing aids have limitations, and in order to hear in public places, there is a law in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that mandates that places where a PA system is used, places where there's a microphone in use on a stage or on a lectern, has to have an assistive listening system installed. And when Chuck mentions the word loop, there's actually 3 different technologies that can interact direct with hearing aids. But a hearing loop is the most convenient. So imagine a hearing loop involves installing of a wire in a facility. And when the audio signal is sent through that wire, it creates ripples in the magnetic field that a small antenna built in the hearing aid can wirelessly pick up. So, I think it's kind of the original Wi-Fi for hearing aids, but it's an analog system. It works, and it allows people to walk into a church anywhere in the world or in a theater, anywhere, as long as they have a T-coil in their hearing aid and the facility either has a loop installed or offers an FM system or infrared system with a neck loop. It quickly can get a little bit technical, but these devices, an FM system or an infrared system requires the user to go to the service desk and pick up a listening device and wear that device, and it will broadcast the audio direct into the hearing aid. So hearing loops at the moment are seamless. There's over 300 theaters in this country that have hearing loops installed, but there's many more that offer devices with neck loops. But there's hearing loops in churches, and they're being installed in trains and ferries, and they're seamless. You walk in, you turn it on, you walk out, you turn it off. And that technology, a lot of your consumers, the people with hearing aids, may be totally unaware that this telecoil is even in their hearing aid.
Good answer.
Just to add on to that, and I think Juliette and I have had a number of conversations about this in various forums, that technologies ultimately are going to coexist together, right? That loop technology has a place. It has definitely had a place in solving problems for people with hearing loss, and there are new technologies that are also coming out that will also solve some of the same problems, but also solve newer issues or provide additional experiences, like what Auracast may do as well. And the technologies ultimately can coexist and will coexist for quite some time together in the market. Really, to me, it's down to the user, right? What is the best experience opportunity for the user? And where can Auracast potentially solve new issues or new problems or provide new experiences where Loop potentially wasn't? And where can Loop ultimately provide experiences that Auracast initially will not be able to resolve? Maybe some of these countertop solutions situations, or walking into the elevator and needing to hear the announcements in the elevator. Those kinds of things are areas where, Loop systems, as the way they stand today, serve perfectly well. And then Auracast comes in and solves additional problems for more people beyond those even with hearing loss.
That's a really good distinction. Thank you for making it. And I wanted to also answer a question that one of our participants asked. Nikolai asked, will there be a significant price difference between Loop systems and Auracast?
So from the perspective of price, there is no cost to the user, so to speak, from this, right? And I know Brian can talk to how it gets implemented into the hearing aids, and we actually are going to see some announcements around hearing aid capabilities with Auracast, as well as assistive listening systems, actually even this year. But I agree with Brian that it'll be moving more into 2024, where you'll see most of the announcements starting to happen. But from a cost perspective, from a standalone perspective, it has been quoted by at least one assistive listening system provider in a public location that the cost of installing an Auracast system is no more than what you might do if you're bringing in an FM system into your location, right? It's essentially plugging it into the source audio, setting up the transmitter, and effectively it's ready to go. You're not laying wire. You're not having to do any additional installation. There's no special seating areas, anything along that line. So from a cost perspective, that's what's been quoted by an assistive listening system provider, that it will cost no more than what you would normally see from an FM system that you might deploy in your location today.
Thank you. Brian, I wanted to ask you, how is this technology going to be integrated in hearing aids?
Well, I'll just speak for Signia. I'm not sure how other manufacturers will do this, but I'll give you an example. We are launching a new product in a few weeks, we call it a platform in the industry called IX, and it will not be compatible with Auracast when it first comes to market. But sometime in 2024, if a person has this particular model, they'd be able to go to their provider, and with a firmware update, that would then allow them to have access to Auracast.
Mm-hmm.
I think the important point is moving forward, it would only be in newer products. And if you had a newer product that you maybe bought this year, you could update it with the firmware and be able to use Auracast.
But I think what's very important is to mention the cost to the consumer. It means new hearing aids, new cochlear implants, and at home maybe a new TV or a new laptop or a new iPhone. And the industry hasn't really solved the solution how a consumer, like my mom, who wears hearing aids and is very capable of activating a telecoil on her hearing aid, how she is going to do this without using a smartphone. Because trust me, you do not want my mother using a smartphone in a church. You know, I mean, you've heard all these horror stories. And so it sounds terrific, but we've been talking about self-driving cars, Abbie, for a long time. And I'm still waiting for my jetpack. I mean, it's easy to be flip about this, but the industry is serving people who are hard of hearing.
Yeah.
And the focus has to be on the experience of the user. The users, it has to be independently tested. An assistive listening standard is still being written as we speak. That standard will not come to fruition until 2026 or 27. So until then, in a lot of countries, audio installers are not going to jump on this technology unless there is an existing standard and there's plenty of devices around to use them. So, I'm excited about new technology, but it's got to work for my friends who have hearing loss and for your family members with hearing loss, Abbie.
Yeah. Yeah. Chuck or Brian, is there anything you want to say to that?
No, I think Juliette, she's being very pragmatic about the whole thing. And I agree that when new technology comes into the market, there's always a time lag associated with it. The difference between being able to talk about the technology coming available and the availability of the technology, there's always a lag between those two times. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity associated with where Auracast is taking us. Right, and where it will take us from a hearing perspective and from an audio access perspective, because really Auracast is yes, it's designed to support those with hearing loss, but it also has opportunities for supporting new audio experiences in general for the consuming public as well, from personal audio sharing, me sharing my audio with you, to unmuting some of the silent TVs that you see everywhere in waiting rooms and airports and gymnasiums and so on. There are ways, and there's lots of innovation that's coming into the market in order to enable those types of products. But I also agree with Juliette that there's a user experience scenario that we always have to keep in mind, right? And there are different levels of users' cognitive abilities or their tech savviness as to whether or not they can use a smartphone, or do they need to use a specific fob or some other type of device that identifies these audio experiences. But it is different. It is new. It is different. And that innovation is what's going to be driven by the companies like WSA and others that are looking to implement Auracast in their devices. And you're going to see a lot of innovation happening over time. And so ultimately, we're driving towards not just for today, but we're thinking about what's the opportunity for tomorrow and how do users ultimately are impacted over the years of deployment and implementation in the market.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. The more that we can have a standard that's going to serve the general public, the better things will be. Brian, do you have anything you want to add to how Auracast will improve the listener's experience, and any limitations that you have that you're concerned about?
Yeah, let me first say that I agree with what Juliette said. I think arguing why we need T-coils and hearing aids for the next decade or more,
Mhm.
because there is this lag. But by that same token, you have to start somewhere.
Yep.
And now's a good time, and I'm excited about Auracast because it will be available in the near future. But it doesn't negate some of these other technologies and the importance of those. And it's also a strong argument for why a person that wears hearing aids needs to work closely with a professional trust. So those are some of the. I just wanted to weigh in on that. When it comes to how it improves the overall performance, it's mainly improving the signal to noise ratio. It's literally putting whoever's talking on the television or through the PA system pretty much right into your ear. So there's all kinds of advantages to that.
Fascinating. I really am just so enjoying this conversation. Tell me, how did Auracast start?
So from my perspective, as a standards organization, so again, I represent the standards organization that is standardizing the technology that will enable what Auracast is doing. And that actually started with the hearing aid companies. The hearing aid companies actually came to Bluetooth and said, we need to standardize our implementations for audio, for that direct access audio and audio capabilities in the hearing aids amongst all of the hearing aid ecosystem. Because originally, when Bluetooth was being integrated into hearing aids, there was a lot of proprietary extensions that were happening in order to enable the capabilities that were necessary for the small size associated with those hearing aids. And the hearing aid companies really came back and said, we've got to get our act together, and we've got to standardize on a single platform. And that's where LA Audio and the new audio capabilities for Bluetooth really started. And then Auracast was as a broadcast technology, was really defined as a how can we solve some of these challenges that users have in terms of audio access in public spaces. And that meant one-to-many type of applications where you had one audio source trying to broadcast to dozens to hundreds of people out in the market or out in a public space. And that's really where Auracast sort of started from. It really started from those hearing aid companies looking to solve their own problem and then continuing to expand on that in terms of user capabilities for the technology.
Yeah, my big worry is that the hearing aid companies will jump on new technology and not put telecoils in hearing aids for people with moderate hearing loss and worse. I could argue that somebody with mild hearing loss may not need assistive technology, but all too often I encounter consumers around the country who have hearing aids, top of the line, and they're rechargeable and they do this and this and this. And then I say, do you have a telecoil so you can hear in the loop here? And they go, what's a telecoil? So there's a lot that needs to be corrected there yet. And it's not Chuck's problem, obviously. It's the hearing industry's problem. And I put some of that squarely on the providers and on the hearing industry, not providing enough materials that consumers can readily access so that they know how to buy hearing aids. That would be another great topic of discussion, Abbie.
Yeah.
Future.
Well, let's ask Brian and see if he can address that at all. How to communicate these advances with consumers.
Oh, that's a big question to try to answer. I at least in the Signia world, we always have a handful of devices that are on that have been recently launched that have a telecoil in one of the models. So I think that's something that most manufacturers do. There is telecoil availability, not in every product, but in many of them. So it's important, of course, that the provider, whoever the person with hearing loss is working with, that they're sitting down and they're finding out what all the options are, and they're becoming educated in what their choices might be, what the advantages and limitations of all these different technologies might be. There are places where you can get information on how to buy a hearing aid. I know that there are different consumer advocacy groups on their websites that have information. I know at one time, I don't know, I can't speak for now, but I know at one time the Hearing Industry Association had on their website information on how to buy hearing aids. I know that Consumer Reports every few years offers issues, articles on how to buy a hearing aid. So it's out there. But, to Juliette's point, sometimes you do have to search around a little bit for it.
Yeah. And I'll say just from our perspective, and I agree with Juliette in terms of just education is always it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to, how do you reach people to help them understand and understand the experience, but also get a sense of that experience. And we've been doing, from a Bluetooth SIG perspective, we've been doing Auracast experience events to try to help people understand what are the possibilities for the technology for the future. And we've gone to events that are where audiologists go to help educate them on the future opportunities associated with Auracast. We'll actually be at OIHA in Nuremberg in 2 weeks with a stand, supporting that industry by setting up an Auracast experience and giving people an opportunity to see what is possible with the technology. And so that's just one way and an additional way of sort of spreading education. But it's always a challenge. I totally agree. It's always a challenge trying to reach the audience with the right information to help people understand what are the possibilities that are in front of them.
What I've noticed is that the folks that I work with at senior living communities, they know about the loop. They've been told about the loop and how it will improve their ability to hear during conferences and meetings. So that communication is being relayed. We had a question from one of our viewers, Matt, about how have you seen the hearing industry change with the ability to purchase over-the-counter hearing aids, and will the OTC hearing aids have telecoil and Auracast capabilities? Brian, you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Let me go ahead and put it back up on the screen, please. There we go.
Okay. Well, so over-the-counter hearing aids have been available since October of last year. Right now, they haven't really moved the needle too much. I just saw this report last week from an investors group from the UK. Somewhere around 2% of total units sold in the US were OTC. So it's been, and maybe not too surprising, relatively slow uptake. Mm-hmm. I think it's great because they offer people a choice. There's always room to try to grow the number of people that we all know inside the industry and in the profession that hearing aids are underutilized, and OTC is just one more way to move people towards the better hearing. Yeah. I'll let others.
Yeah, and it's very possible if Auracast truly takes off and becomes the technology of standard. Let's say you can go to the airport and there's Auracast in every television. It first needs to be installed, obviously, but it's very possible that will also increase the uptake of hearing aids because consumers are more aware that these devices aren't just for hearing one-on-one, but they can bring in sounds from a distance as well. So that's, I think, super exciting. But
yeah, Juliette and I have had
take a while.
Yeah, Juliette and I had this conversation before that, Bluetooth as a consumer technology services more than just people with hearing loss. And I'm just trying to say this in the sense of that you don't need to be a person with a hearing aid in order to access the capabilities that are associated with Auracast and augmented audio, assistive audio, or the need for assistance in audio can be for everyone, right? So whether or not you have hearing aids or you have earbuds or headsets or headphones, that's where Auracast will enhance and provide audio access for everyone, essentially. Now, to that point, if you realize that you need that assistance, then that might actually drive you closer towards actually doing something about it, right? Finally getting that hearing aid that you needed for so long, because now you recognize what assistive audio actually can do for you as a user. So there are, and I mean, again, that needs to be proven out, but there are all kinds of theoretical opportunities associated with audio access that helps people make the decision to actually do something about it when they wouldn't do it otherwise.
Thank you so much for explaining that. With just a couple of minutes left, I want to give you an opportunity to let people know how they can get in touch with you. So, Juliette, when people have questions and they want to connect with you, what's the best way?
Best way, email jsturkins@hearingloss.org. I have a small website that's informational called loopwisconsin.com. And if you Google Juliette Sturkins, believe it or not, I pop up on the web.
I believe it. I believe it. And Chuck, how about you? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, connecting with email is the best way. Same with Juliette. It's csabin@bluetooth.com. A couple other things. I would encourage people to go to bluetooth.com, actually /Auracast, and you can get all kinds of information about what Auracast is, where it's, how it's being deployed, the benefits and opportunities. And then we do try to attend a number of the different events where you may go. So if you happen to be at OIHA, as an example, in Nuremberg in 2 weeks, stop by. I'll be there talking about Auracast, giving people explanations on the experiences and demonstrating what's possible with the technology for the future.
Excellent. And Brian, how about you?
Well, as tempting as it is to say, send me a letter. I also brian.taylor@wsa.com is how you can reach me.
Great. And
Abbie, I have one more thing that I forgot. The Hearing Loss Association is hearingloss.org. And if you Google Get in the Hearing Loop, there's a boatload of information, a complete toolkit for people who have trouble hearing in public venues and how we can get, at the moment, more hearing loops installed around the country.
Actually, Juliette, you're actually downplaying the resource that you just put together for the HLAA and the advocates, and they have an advocate book. Yeah, a complete book on how to advocate. I'll take it from my perspective to say how to advocate for hearing access, right? So it focuses a lot on loop, but the general message that we'd really like to get out to advocates is that they advocate for hearing access, right? Whatever technology it may be, whatever it might be best for that particular location, that you advocate best as individuals to those locations. And there's tools and resources that Juliette and her team have put together that are quite incredible in terms of how they've been put together.
Yeah. Thanks.
I am looking forward to looking into that, and I'll get that link and repost it later. When I repost the broadcast here. And for those of you who also want to stay in connection with Auracast, there is a LinkedIn group, and that's where I came in contact with my panel today. So you could go on the LinkedIn group, you could type in Auracast and get in on the conversation right there, right? All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for educating us, and thank you for engaging in this age tech innovation space. And we will be back here next week.